Story 1. A girl in my grade passed away suddenly in her sleep. Her enemy approached her best friend the day after and said, "I'm glad that girl is dead. The world is a better place now." This happened the next day in the library, where the grieving center was set up with therapy dogs in front of everyone. The friend grabbed the enemy by her hair and repeatedly slammed her face into the corner of a bookshelf until the enemy was knocked out and could no longer stand. The friend was expelled. The enemy returned to school about a month later with her face stitched and scarred and was bullied so badly that she had to transfer out of public school about 2 weeks later. I never saw her again. Ironically, the enemy's name was Sunny. Story 2. A guy in my class during our senior year was having an affair with the music and choir teacher and got her pregnant. She divorced her husband, who was the father of her 5 children, to be with my classmate. At our 20-year reunion, they showed up as husband and wife, and their son came with them. Story 3. The septic system exploded, causing sewage to overflow through the toilets. Despite the entire school smelling unpleasant for weeks, they still required us to attend school. Story 4. Mine was not high school but junior high school. One of our teachers was caught cheating on her husband. He caught them in the act, shot them both in bed, dragged their naked bodies out on the lawn, then shot himself. Story 5. The girls' basketball coach was sexually assaulting one of the girls on the team. According to him, it was consensual, but she was under the age of 16. He is in prison. Story 6. Probably not the most, because we did have some deaths, but I remember a football player got tackled so hard his testicles twisted and he lost a testicle. His nickname was Uniballer after that, and the rumor was that even though they saved the other testicle, he was probably infertile. Story 7. Read the controversies section of my alma mater's Wikipedia. Also, a family sued the school for a baseball coach punching a student in the back of the head, damaging his vision and ruining his chances of playing collegiate baseball. Story 8. We had a phase where delinquent kids learned how to make smoke bombs at home using potassium nitrate. It was not our best year in mom's kitchen. Story 9. The most popular girl in school hanged herself in the girls' room when she found out she was pregnant. It is really sad. Story 10. Drinking and driving resulted in a student's death. The wreck was brought to campus and left on display for a week. It was sobering. Story 11. When girls made varsity sports teams, they had to undergo a hazing ritual where they were given a list of items to buy for the event. On the day of the special event, older varsity players would take those items and use them on the new team members. Items included oil, feathers, swimming flippers, duct tape for taping legs, skin paint, leotards, and more. We were paraded through the school, photos were taken for the yearbook and local newspaper, and other students were encouraged to physically harass us. We had to pass the hazing ritual to earn our varsity sports position. Varsity boys did not have to undergo hazing. Our parents took us to buy the hazing materials. It was a special reward for school officials to be pictured with us, especially at the end of the day when we looked the worst. This experience provides insight into what life was like. Story 12. Chimpanzees from a local zoo escaped and entered the school grounds. Children were locked inside the school, and police ended up shooting the chimpanzees because zookeepers could not control them. No one other than the chimpanzees was hurt, which is very sad. Story 13. There used to be a place called the Pit just minutes away from school where everyone went to smoke during lunch. Everyone was usually friendly and there to smoke and talk. One time, 2 kids were slap fighting, which means they were only slapping each other. It was a little cringe, I know. The kid who was losing got upset and pulled out a small tool, then stabbed the other kid in the side. I have not seen either of them since. The injured kid did not die. Story 14. A couple of girls fighting escalated into a fire in the bathroom. It was an honest mistake that could have happened to anyone fighting with flaming rolls of toilet paper. Story 15. The math teacher was cooking methamphetamine and was arrested during our calculus class. I was homesick that day. Years later, I moved back to my hometown and enrolled my child in a church-based preschool. One day, when I went to pick him up, I met the principal. Yes, it was Mr. Mr. Math. Story 16. A group of girls who had just graduated went on a road trip but got into a serious car accident that killed all four of them. I am sorry, Amanda. You were also kind to me. Story 17. I went to a boys' boarding school. In the middle of the night, one student woke up to another student performing a sexual act on him. The student freaked out and yelled for help while the other student ran away and attempted to harm himself in the basement. Story 18. I went to an art school with a special program for the senior band students, where they traveled to Europe to perform. I heard from a band friend that they had to return home early because some of the students had planned an inappropriate gathering in their hotel room, and one of the supervising teachers found out and walked in on them. At the same time, another student in a separate room was overdosing on something and had to be rushed to the hospital. The trip was ruined after that. Story 19. There was always a Sesame Street. It was where everyone hung out after school, drank, played games, and smoked. The police never found out where it was because Sesame Street always moved every 3 to 6 months. It was located in whatever subdevelopment was being built at the time. From the time they cleared the area of trees, through paving of the streets, foundation digging and pouring, framing and finishing, we partied. Once the landscaping started, we found another place being developed. Depending on how big the place was and what phase we started using it, they could last 3 to 6 months year-round. We were in a construction boom, so this lasted all 4 years of my high school career and the next 12 years of friends and relatives. The fact that such a large number of people were able to keep the locations a secret for so long was massively impressive. It wasn't discovered until people from my grade grew up, started careers as police officers, and knew where to look. Even then, they looked after the kids because the things that went on there were not major crimes. Until one kid and his friends smashed a house so badly that it fell in on top of them. 2 died and 3 were injured. The last guy was untouched and ended up breaking into the finished house years later and hanging himself in the owner's nursery at about 2 a.m. The new parents found him swaying lifelessly over their baby's crib. Story 20. Straight A's across the board. The best student in class died by overdose after finding out she was pregnant. This is very sad. Story 21. 7 years after I graduated, the drama and speech teacher was arrested for sodomy and lewd molestation of a 14-year-old. He skipped town while out on bail. His story was told on a television show similar to 48 Hours. 15 minutes after it aired, he was turned in and captured in Panama City, Florida. Story 22. A kid faked his own death for attention, complete with a memorial page and crying posts from his friends. 2 days later, he showed up at school like nothing happened and said he just wanted to see who cared. Teachers cried. Administration nearly called the police. We still bring it up at reunions like it was a normal Tuesday. Story 23. Not nearly as crazy as the other, but somehow every single year we had a power outage for at least a day. It would always go off midway through first period and then not come back on until 5 to 10 minutes before school ended. They couldn't send us home because our buses only run once for all the kids from kindergarten through 12th grade. Also, this usually happened in November and it was cold because Canada. For some reason, the teachers refused to let us wear coats, but they all wore them. They should have just sent us home. Story 24. While I was there, aside from the many teen pregnancies, one of our classmates shot himself by pointing a .22 caliber gun into the roof of his mouth and pulling the trigger. He survived but severely damaged his palate and sinuses. Additionally, one of the shop teachers was arrested for sexually assaulting a student. There was also a triple fatality motor vehicle accident with one critically injured person, which deeply affected one of my teacher friends and disrupted the class significantly. Story 25. A few things. A girl was caught giving her boyfriend oral sex in the stairwell. What made it worse was the guy lived across the street and his mother wasn't home, so they could have easily walked 60 feet and been in private. My graduating class ruined our school's chances of hosting any further proms because 98% of our grade showed up under the influence of substances. A 9th grader was caught selling kittens out of her locker in exchange for cigarettes. We also had a lot of strange accidents involving students starting around 2012 to 2016. They didn't happen at school, but we had many memorials over the years. Story 26. Scene. Homecoming week. After the junior varsity football game on Thursday, a group of seniors piled into a truck, with more in the bed of the truck, to head to Whataburger. The driver somehow flipped the truck, resulting in 6 helicopter evacuations. Everyone survived. Most needed skin grafts because they were severely burned when they hit the pavement at speed. The driver sustained a serious traumatic brain injury and now functions at the level of a 4th grader. It is unclear if he has more complex thoughts but is locked in. His outlook is bleak. This was 15 years ago. The driver was not really a friend, but we knew each other, so I sometimes wonder how he is doing and what his condition is. Story 27. A senior student was found tied up in the washroom with "I quit" written on the wall in blood. This caused a lot of chaos and was reported on the state's news. Later, it was discovered that the student had tied herself up after writing "I quit" with pig's blood. All the drama was just to avoid the pre-board exam. Story 28. Not my high school, but the middle school where I taught. 5 teachers and an assistant superintendent were having affairs. All 6 marriages ended in divorce. The assistant superintendent and his affair partner were caught in the act in a classroom after school by the principal. Students were still in the building for after-school activities, and these two were having candlelit romantic encounters in the math room. Story 29. Someone pulled out a gun in a fight this year. Several times people have brought weapons, but nobody has died or been injured as far as I know. Story 30. This child was sent to a youth detention center for a fight involving a hammer with another child. I am not sure how much of that is true, but she was expelled. Story 31. A severe derecho in August 2020 blew a 10-foot, 3-meter wide hole in the roof and ceiling of the main gymnasium. Wind gusts from the storm reached 140 miles per hour, 225 kilometers per hour. To put that into perspective, that is the same wind velocity as a Category 4 hurricane. The school had to shut down for nearly a month after the storm. Story 32. 3 people ended their lives prematurely in a single year. I knew about one of them. I found out about the other 2 when a police officer at a school function asked me how the school handled it with the students. By the look on my face, he knew he had made a mistake. Story 33. Watched a girl get beaten senseless over a pair of gym shoes that were misplaced. She was beaten so badly that she had to be taken to the emergency room for her injuries. She was accused of stealing the shoes, which were later found by our coach. Story 34. In high school, 2 of our gym teachers were caught having sex in the school pool. They kept their jobs, and one of the 2 involved is now vice principal. However, the pool was drained and completely sanitized. Story 35. A friend of mine in an unsupervised advanced chemistry class, with a substitute teacher that day, made an explosive and the beaker blew up in his hand. Story 36. I got my clothes really dirty, and the director told me I needed to clean myself up. I had to take off all my clothes except my underpants and wash everything in front of nearly the whole school. Story 37. A girl was assaulted at the baseball diamond by 3 of her friends when they were in 9th grade, and they all continued to hang out for the rest of high school. Story 38. Girls at my school were molested at a gas station in town because they had heard rumors that if they showed the cashier their breasts, they would get free vaping products. Then he started touching them and would not let them leave. While these girls were stuck in the back room of the gas station, another person who was their friend at the time ran to the front of the store to steal as many items as possible, including vaping products and cigarettes. There was also a teacher who sold drugs to students and blackmailed them about it, but that was before my time, so I do not know much about it. Story 39. The teacher went home for lunch. Her husband killed her, then set himself and the house on fire. We were waiting in her class for the first block after lunch, but she did not show up. We found out later what had happened. Story 40. Lots of drugs and casual violence. Staff had to break up fights between students constantly. I remember seeing 3 fights break out right in front of me. Seemed normal. In terms of really serious incidents, 2 boys went through the ice one winter while driving a snowmobile on a lake. They both drowned. After I graduated, my band teacher, whom I really respected, had a sexual relationship with a student. She was over the age of consent, but there was evidence the relationship started before that. He served jail time and afterward abandoned his wife and children to move across the country. She developed cancer a few years later and died. As far as I know, he did not take the children back after that. It has bothered me for years that he did that. I loved playing music in high school, and it soured many of my memories to discover he was unethical. Story 41. A student on the golf team entered the freshman hallways and teed off into the crowded area. Someone was nearly injured. Story 42. We had an undercover police officer embedded in classes 21 Jump Street style for 3 months. On the day of the drug bust, there was a massive takedown on school grounds with dozens of police officers swarming the school. Story 43. One person was killed during a breaking and entering. A girl took her own life before prom. 2 teachers were involved in affairs with each other. One student killed his family and planned to attack the school but decided not to. Story 44. Racial fight which did not actually take place at school but in a city park. Bats, chains, knives, and other weapons were involved. Quite surprisingly, nobody was killed, but there were dozens of injuries. There must have been around 150 participants. Story 45. A kid I knew died of a heroin overdose in one of the bathroom stalls and was not found until a couple of days later. One guy I knew was allegedly incestuous with his sister, not his stepsister, but his actual sister. Another guy worked as an underage male stripper, possibly offering additional services. One of my girlfriends from that era cheated on me with 2 or 3 guys simultaneously at a party and was sexually assaulted by them, according to her story. I was informed otherwise, dumped her, refused to read her letter explaining herself, went to a very dark place, and only revealed plans for revenge more than 30 years later. I tried to take my own life, but the plastic-coated clothesline rope had deteriorated and snapped before it could harm me. No one noticed or commented on the marks on my neck. I am in a better place now, with responsibilities that prevent self-harm. Story 46. Not in high school, but middle school. One of my best friends, when we were 12 years old, was having an inappropriate relationship with his English teacher. She was married with children who also attended the school. He essentially received immunity from law enforcement while the case was ongoing. He broke into a construction site where the keys were left in all the equipment. He caused over $500,000 in damage operating a bulldozer, yet never faced any charges. She spent several years in prison. Story 47. One of the security guards was caught having inappropriate relations with several female students and is about to be released soon. Another security guard had connections with a well-known rapper. Story 48. A gym teacher married a student after she graduated and was then caught stealing merchandise worth $370 from Kohl's, which seems unlikely. The principal confiscated alcohol at prom, drank it all, and sexually assaulted students. A student was about to shoot people but called the police from the bathroom and turned himself in. The school never went on lockdown. A teacher was caught texting students on a dating app. This is an example of incidents reported in New Jersey. Story 49. This was back in 2014 when I was in 8th grade. A man killed his father with a machete, then came to our school and tried to get in. He walked up to the gym doors and pulled on them, but the school was on lockdown so he could not get in. Then, he walked by a line of parents outside who were waiting to pick up their children. Parents saw him, became concerned, and called the police. At the time, most of us, including me and the rest of my 8th grade class, were walking on the track behind the school. I was walking with my friend back into the school, and as we entered the hallway, a teacher grabbed us by our arms and told us to come into her room. Teachers were pulling all the children they could into their rooms, trying to ensure we were safe. We were all told to be very quiet while this was happening. I remember hearing a helicopter overhead, looking out the window, and seeing the words special weapons and tactics on the side of it. Being younger and caught up in the moment, I was not completely sure what was happening, just hoping everything would be okay. It was shocking to find out about it afterward. Story 50. Someone released smoke in the school library. It was not a real bomb, and to my knowledge, no one was hurt. At the time, I thought it was a pretty cool prank. Story 51. We have had a couple of teachers arrested for having sexual relations with students. One was arrested for exchanging nude pictures with an adult student. There was also a bedbug scare. Story 52. Two students sneaked into the lunchroom after the lunch break was over, and a female student performed oral sex on another student behind the vending machines. Story 53. One of our high school teachers used to throw parties at her house for her favorite students. She would have everyone turn in their car keys at the door, and everyone would party all night. One night, she fell asleep on the couch, and a couple of students placed an inappropriate object on her face and took a picture that quickly went viral locally. It even appeared in the local newspaper. She took a break from teaching, but as far as I know, she returned to work a few years ago. Story 54. My high school music teacher was having an affair with a student and got her pregnant. I called him Mr. Fish because he literally looked like a trout from SpongeBob SquarePants. I went to an all-girls school, and because he was one of the few male staff and younger than most students, he was in his late 20s or early 30s, he got a lot of attention from some of the students. One day, Mr. Trout suddenly disappeared, and the teachers were very uncomfortable when we asked about him. Word spread quickly that he had been in a relationship with a student for some time. She became pregnant, and apparently they ran off together. He was married with children. He always gave me uncomfortable vibes and used to stand behind students' chairs for unnaturally long periods, staring down at them with an odd smile on his face. One time, I'm sure I caught him smelling one of the girls' hair. Story 55. A school shooting. Not a joke. Parents gave their mentally unstable underage child a gun, knew it was missing, and did not speak up. Then they lied. The child killed several students and shot a few teachers. The parents went on the run. Story 56. A girl abused her dog and was disturbingly proud of it. She transferred after a year, but the thought still haunts me today. Edit to add. There was a photo or video of it circulating at the time, but I never searched for it. The fact that I even remember it happening makes me queasy. Story 57. Back in 1975, before I went there, a 15-year-old girl and her 21-year-old boyfriend killed her parents. She beat her mother's head with a hammer, and he shot her father with a pistol. They took the bodies to a state park, found an out-of-the-way spot, and thoroughly burned them. A few bone fragments were found, large enough to be determined as human. He is in San Quentin prison for life, and she was released when she was 21 due to being a minor at the time. The oldest brother knew her. Story 58. I went to a really sheltered high school where everyone was fairly well behaved and the staff was strict. But a few hilarious things happened. First, a student thought he would try to act tough and brought a bag of salt to school, pretending it was cocaine. He was suspended for a week anyway. It was legitimately half a Ziploc bag of salt. It would have been thousands of dollars worth of substance if it had been cocaine. Second, a student claimed he received oral sex in the bathroom. He never said who gave it to him and no one witnessed it. He was suspended for 3 days anyway. Third, a student graduated but was still dating a junior at the school and came to many events, including signing up for and participating in the school talent show. One of the teachers got fed up with seeing him so often and banned him from campus, calling it a postgraduate suspension. Story 59. I went to a small college preparatory school. A girl in the grade below me, with whom I had many classes, went missing. I had identical twin friends, and they found DNA from one of them buying an edible from her that night. They had to take both twins just to be sure since their DNA was identical. Exactly 6 months to the day after she went missing, a girl from a reform school admitted that she and her boyfriend killed her, cut out the apartment carpet, rolled her up, and threw her off a rural exit. Then they told the police they hid her body in a bog an hour away for months. They were not arrested until that girl came forward. We were sitting around a campfire with the twins when they found her body and skull. The school held a vigil for her and made efforts to find her during those months. I still have the ribbon her mother gave out when we thought she was just missing. Rest in peace, Annie. Story 60. We had a female physical education teacher involved with multiple male students. I remember that when she was brought to trial the following year, We received a special announcement the day before Halloween reminding us that costumes related to current events were not allowed at school. Additionally, the school's internet blocked any media related to the trial, so it was impossible to look up information about it on school grounds. Story 61. I went to a rural school and saw a girl get beaten with cowboy boots for being involved with someone's boyfriend. Story 62. A young man from a community a few hours north of our school was dating a girl in my class. One day, he murdered his parents, kidnapped his brother, and then came to our school with a gun to pick up his girlfriend, who was my classmate. The school went into lockdown and the emergency response team, essentially a special weapons and tactics unit, was called. They had set up barricades on the paths leading to the school, but I managed to find a route to the parking lot, passed all of them, and ended up parking right beside him, wondering why the parking lot was completely empty if I was late. A member of the Special Weapons and Tactics Unit yelled at me. I jumped back in my car and went to a local fast food restaurant to chat with my friends and call our school secretary to find out what was happening. Everyone at school was fine, and he was arrested outside the school. Story 63. In the early 1990s, some racist individuals circulated a petition trying to ban Mexican migrants from attending our school. A local news station discovered the story and aired it. Reporters interviewed some of the students, blurring their faces and voices. 3 students were expelled for creating the list. Everyone who signed it was suspended for a week. After one student, not associated with the petition, was beaten at a mall for wearing their varsity jacket, the school warned us not to wear anything for a while. Story 64. Not the most disturbing thing, but still upsetting nonetheless. A male and female student allegedly went to her house to spend time together during their lunch break. Her father, a police officer, came home early and caught them. He was known to be power-hungry and aggressive, so he chased the student out of the house and threatened to have him imprisoned for life. She told her father that the student was assaulting her. The student was temporarily suspended during the investigation but later reinstated when he was found innocent. Almost the entire school turned against her after that. In the end, she left because her father did not want her attending the same school as the student. Story 65. I somehow graduated without ever taking a Spanish class in high school, even though it was required. I do not know how it happened. Story 66. Someone took an extremely large bowel movement in the bathroom. No one knows who it was or how it happened. Around third period, there was a smell coming from the second-floor bathroom on the men's side. The mass was literally wide, about 3 times wider than a normal one. The length was about a foot. The smell was unbearable, and people were taking pictures of it with their phones. To flush it, the janitor had to break it up with a plunger. I don't understand how someone could pass that without injury. It's just bizarre. Some people theorized that a compacted bunch of feces was stuck in the toilet piping and got forced back up into the bowl. That can't be possible, though, because it wouldn't have been as wide as it was. Story 67. This occurred at my high school in southern Illinois. One Saturday night, kids from my town, Johnston City, would join in cruising around the nearby town of Marion, as kids did back in the late 1980s when there was nothing better to do. Normally, everyone got along fine until one night when a kid from our town had an altercation with a kid from Marion at Hardee's. The Johnston City kid went back to his car and came back with a crowbar, which he used to strike the Marion kid in the back of the head, sending him into a coma. The Marion kids were angry about this and planned revenge. They intended to show up at our high school en masse after school the next Monday to confront the perpetrator. We were prepared to fight them off. I personally did not care about the kid from our school. I was just there because I liked to fight. About 20 minutes before the final bell rang, I looked out the window, wondering if they would show up. Sure enough, police cars came in a steady stream down the avenue leading to our school. Johnston City, Marion, Williamson County, all the law enforcement officers. Still, several dozen of us hung out on the grounds just to see if they would come. Sure enough, another long line of cars rolled down Jefferson Avenue and turned right back around after seeing all the police car lights. We all had a good laugh about the whole ordeal. I do not know what happened to either of the 2 boys involved. Things tended to get swept under the rug in that part of the country. Story 68. Our two-star varsity football players pulled guns on a rival gang member right in front of the principal. Story 69. My then best friend dated someone who was 7 years older than we were. I was 16, she was 16, and her boyfriend was 23. It was upsetting for me. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just thought he was a jerk because he basically ended my friendship with her single-handedly. But knowing that age gap was there terrifies me now. Story 70. A teacher became pregnant by a ninth grader. That is the worst thing I know. It was the early 2000s and I had just discovered computers and the internet, so I did not care about local drama. Story 71. An English teacher groomed teenage boys by convincing them to do things like stomp on his food and urinate in his crockpot in exchange for money. He resigned in 2011 after the first group of boys came forward, but the school district covered it up. This teacher was later hired at a Catholic school and began the same behavior, prompting another investigation. In 2023, several victims, now in their late 20s to early 30s, came forward and shared text exchanges and proof on social media. Story 72. Someone defecated in a urinal in the boys' locker room of my incredibly small high school and then set it on fire. I have never seen a gym teacher that angry, walking around spraying air freshener. Story 73. One of the 3 coaches for our girls' hockey team was caught having an inappropriate relationship with one of the players. Also, a girl found out her boyfriend was cheating on her, so she grabbed a wrench from the woodshop room and beat him badly with it. This happened on the second day of school during my freshman year. Story 74. Our alcoholic French teacher was smoking in her classroom between classes. She stuffed the still-lit cigarette butt in her purse and slammed the desk drawer when the bell rang. It was a short class. Story 75. A girl killed another girl and herself before I went to the high school. A student's body was found near the school after I went. Nothing really crazy happened while I was there, as far as I know. Story 76. My sophomore year, 2006, about 10 kids died. 1 group of 3 in a car accident, 2 in a 4-wheeler accident, 1 in a house fire, and 1 had an undiagnosed heart condition and collapsed on a staircase before the morning bell. I cannot even remember all of them. Story 77. A group of men was run off the road by a semi-truck while coming home from a water park. 3 died. A few weeks later, during a football game in the park, a man was tackled and left paralyzed. After one of many sad, drunken nights missing our friends, 2 men left on a motorcycle, hit a fence, and were impaled. It was a very difficult year. Story 78. A teacher had an affair with a student, was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and set himself on fire in a field. Another person was intoxicated, walked across the highway, and was hit by a young girl, dying immediately. The joke around the school, although difficult to believe, was crash and burn. There was actually more to these stories, but this one stood out the most to me. Story 79. There was a girl in the 9th grade whose boyfriend, a 40-year-old man, would visit her during lunch. We would see him with his aviator sunglasses and stubbles sitting against the windows inside, waiting for her to get to her lockers. Then they would eat lunch together in the school cafeteria. Nobody said or did anything about it, as if it was completely normal. Some students in my class tried to start a Ku Klux Klan chapter. There was only 1 black family in the entire town, and their children were not even in our class. This was in Canada. Story 80. In 1994, my best friend was having a relationship with our English teacher, who was probably around 25 years old or younger. She had written him a love note. He showed it to me, and I went straight to the office to make a copy. The next day, after the bell rang and everyone had left the room, I told her I would pass her class with an A. She laughed and said I was probably going to fail. I handed her the copy and passed with an A- without doing any work. Story 81. Well, I am online, but my aunt held up someone in a bathroom and threatened to bomb her school. She was not even sent to jail or anything. She is free to this day and might do it or something worse. Story 82. A friend of mine dedicated his senior will to a teacher at a nearby school who helped him come out of the closet when they met during summer school. Senior wills appeared in the school newspaper and were usually the seniors bestowing funny things on campus to lowerclassmen. Story 83. This was very recent, but two of our teachers and coaches were arrested. One for driving under the influence, and the other for inappropriate conduct with a student, according to the statement. Wild Times. Story 84. Freshman Halloween party, which I was thankfully not invited to, had alcohol. The only reason our school found out about it was because a student showed videos of the party to a teacher who often acts like she is best friends with all the students. There were bottles in the background, so the teacher had to report the incident to the principal. Story 85. A teacher who chaperoned sports trips was caught having an inappropriate relationship with the team. A girl broke up with her boyfriend, and he suffocated himself on their anniversary using a plastic bag and a zip tie. Story 86. Do you remember the picture on the news of the hallway full of students not wearing a mask when they returned to school after coronavirus disease restrictions were lifted? Story 87. My freshman year, a fellow classmate's little sister hung herself in a closet. My senior year, the sister did the same thing in the same place. Story 88. Some students were suspended for vaping in the bathrooms. Allegedly, one employee at the school was a pedophile, and I caught him looking at my legs. I am not sure if it was related to what we were doing at the time, but it made me very uncomfortable. Story 89. Did not happen at school, but one random day a bunch of kids were not at school. It turned out a train derailed and plowed through several blocks, destroying homes and businesses. Story 90. The biology teacher was caught running a drug ring and using students to distribute drugs and sell to them. Story 91. Some gay freshmen received harsh treatment from some seniors a couple of years after I graduated. They went to court and were found not guilty despite several witnesses. Story 92. Definitely not as messed up as some of these other posts, but one girl defecated in a bag at home, brought it to school, and put it in another girl's book bag. It is disgusting to think of touching someone else's waste in my bag next to my things. Story 93. A student said in assembly that he wanted to smoke in the school. He ripped open his shirt and had packs of cigarettes strapped on his suspenders like bandoliers. He threw cigarettes into the audience saying, "You want to smoke and I want to smoke." Two security guards carried him off. The principal at the next assembly proclaimed that he could have had that young man expelled. 1974 Brooklyn, New York. Story 94. In 1988, two children broke into the school, set fire to the library, and spray-painted Nazi symbols everywhere. The community reacted strongly with articles, marches, and more. The children bragged to someone and were caught. It turned out the symbols were intended as a joke or for drama because $500,000 in damage was not dramatic enough. Story 95. A student died by suicide on campus one morning while classes were in session. He hung himself. Several people witnessed the incident. It was highly traumatic. Our teachers were devastated. Story 96. There were these strange punk guys who exhumed bodies from an old abandoned cemetery and posed them in different positions. Story 97. Reading this thread makes me happy my high school days were fairly tame. However, my high school science teacher was killed in an accident when he was hit by a car while riding his bicycle. The driver was a graduating senior. Story 98. A popular and well-liked student in the grade below me shot himself in the bathroom during exam week when I was a junior in 2011. It really affected our community. I did not know him well, but I knew he was very kind and had many friends. Rest in peace, Connor. Story 99. I graduated in 2008 from a Catholic school. During my sophomore year, a classmate was drugged and violently gang raped at a house party. The police were aware but did virtually nothing, and the parish tried to cover it up because one of the perpetrators was related to our pastor. The victim committed suicide in 2011. Story 100. A teacher sent inappropriate photos of himself to a student on a social networking app. Dishonorable mention. Two seniors decided to dress up as a slave, including blackface, and a slave owner for Halloween. They tried to justify it by saying they were Indiana Jones and Saddam. Story 101. Off the top of my head, in grade 9, a student stabbed another student in the neck with a ballpoint pen during a fight. Story 102. First week of 9th grade. I was waiting outside for my ride when I saw a group of kids come around the side of the building. One kid with the group started a fight with another random kid, and the group surrounded them. After some parents and teachers came to break up the fight, one of the kids was stabbed and needed emergency medical services to pick him up. Story 103. A male English teacher used his school email to send inappropriate messages to former students immediately after their graduations. These emails were sent during school hours, indicating he was composing them during class. The misconduct was discovered when a substitute teacher saw the messages on his computer. He was emailing several graduates with explicit content in detail. This raises concerns about whether the students were groomed while he was their teacher. He was married with children. He was rightfully terminated. Additionally, another male teacher was fired for throwing a chair at a parent during parent-teacher night. Story 104. The substitute teacher and the United States history teacher were reenacting the Bill and Monica White House moment in his car in the school parking lot. Story 105. When I was 11 or 12, our school received a call saying there was a bomb. A whole bomb squad arrived. It was a mess because it had never happened before, and our school rarely practiced fire drills. It turned out to be a prank by a student targeting the principal. He was expelled, of course. For me, it was a good day because we skipped lessons. Also, because it was chaotic, we did not cooperate as a team with the rest of the class when leaving the building. My best friend and I just left the scene and went to the supermarket to buy some soda and chips. Story 106. Two things. Children from the 2010s who are the most ignorant individuals our school has ever seen, and someone was stabbed. Story 107. My sophomore chemistry teacher threatened to shoot some of her students and was forced to resign afterwards. Story 108. A child chopped the tip of his finger off when it got caught in a door. It was a grim incident during the lunch break. Story 109. The best wrestler was using a jigsaw and sliced his right index finger off at the first joint. It got sucked up into the ventilation, and a maintenance crew member came and emptied the vents. They were able to reattach the finger, though. Story 110. A teacher had a relationship with a student. The teacher had a child currently attending high school. The teacher went to prison and later died in prison from cancer. Story 111. Okay, so I don't know if there were horrible things like some of these comments, but I have to share some because my school was wild. The computer science teacher took home a school DSLR camera, recorded a tape with his wife, and brought the camera back without deleting the video, which was later found by the soccer team. He didn't get fired, just suspended, and then he retired. During the summer, the science teacher met a guy at a bar and took him home. Next semester, he was in her 11th grade class, meaning he was 15 or 16 years old. To be fair to her, he had a fake ID. A couple of months ago, I found out the kid she was involved with was my old boss's brother. The English teacher was caught with a girl in my grade, 10th at the time, in the back parking lot during lunch. The back lot is connected to the football field, and everyone spent lunch there. This is more of a personal issue, but the business teacher, who was very touchy-feely with female students, married a girl fresh out of high school about 6 months after she graduated. Their daughter was born during my 9th grade year, and they basically named their daughter with a name very similar to mine, just swapping the first letter. My name is unique, so I won't say the exact names, but think Caitlin versus Caitlin. There's no way it was a coincidence. The business teacher and the same science teacher were engaged. The engagement ended, and they went to court over their dog. When I was in school, they both had 50-50 custody. 2 kids managed to get into the ceiling tiles, climbed over the bathrooms to have sex, but fell through and broke a toilet. The school wanted to reduce kids ditching class, so they enforced a rule that no one could be in the halls without a bathroom pass. You either had to be in class or leave the property. You couldn't sit in the fishbowl, the student square, or the library unless your class booked it. The cafeteria was locked unless it was lunch. While I understand their intention, this applied even to people with free periods like me. One 9th or 10th grader, I was in 12th then, was late to class due to a dentist appointment. Despite confirming she was at the dentist, they told her to leave. She walked to a grocery store a couple of blocks away to wait out the period but almost got kidnapped. This rule wasn't around for much longer. Kids were also doing cocaine on toilet seats, so we lost door privileges. Not the actual stall doors, but the door to the hallway. However, the handicap stall was less than a foot from the door, which made it unusable. I wish I still had the video I took because the stall was literally right by the hall. Story 112. Heroin overdose in the bathroom. They survived though. I would also say when the school and McDonald's nearby conducted a sting operation, they obtained footage from McDonald's and gave a lot of people, including me, minor in possession citations. We did not go back to McDonald's. Story 113. Regular shooting and bomb threats. They stopped bothering me. We would have discussions about how serious they might be. It became way too normalized. On a lighter note, on senior prank day, someone used string to hang a very sizable rubber phallus over the main entrance. I don't know how they found the roof access on this 3-story building, but it was impressive. I heard, though never confirmed, that there were 2 more at the back entrances as well. Story 114. The art teacher had been having sex with female students for years, and it really was not a secret. He was finally exposed my senior year and was fired, but by then he was ready to retire and it was all covered up. Also, a small group of seniors kidnapped an entire civics class as part of what was supposed to be a student club promotion, but it went very wrong, partly because none of the administrators were notified. Having it happen while the Weather Underground, the Symbionese Liberation Army, Patty Hearst, the Zebra murders, and the Zodiac Killer were prominent in the region was not a good idea either. Story 115. The school pastor and counselor was caught with multiple hard drives containing illegal material involving underage individuals. My high school lied about the years he worked there, so the news did not associate my high school with him. This was very deceptive. In reality, he did work there when he was arrested. It was never officially verified, but the entire grade level believed he was molesting a special needs boy in our grade. He would come find the boy during class and bring him to the counselor's office for supposed family reasons. It was disturbing. Story 116. Emo dude was giving my girlfriend at the time a back rub. He never stole her, but eventually dated another student who looked similar to my girlfriend. When his girlfriend's mother found out they were intimate, he was 18, and she was not. She threatened to report him to the police. Remember, kids, this age group really doesn't understand the Romeo and Juliet laws, but when they hear the word rape, I guess it made them panic. They got together and murdered the mother. They vanished, and for about a week there was a national manhunt to find them. They ended up fleeing to the Bay Area and were caught. Both turned on one another in court, trying to blame the other. The trial found the boyfriend guilty and her as an accomplice. It is still sad all around that it went down the way it did. Poor mother. Story 117. My 16-year-old friend got caught in bed with our teacher at her home by her husband, who was a member of the Outlaws motorcycle gang. He didn't kill him, probably because he was a smaller 16-year-old kid, but threw him down the front steps, which injured his knee. It was 20 degrees, and he had to run 5 miles through the countryside naked to get to a friend's house. He had to have knee surgery the next day. The teacher didn't get in trouble for that, but had to resign the next year when another man she had been involved with, an adult, broke into their house with a gun and was shot dead by her husband. No charges were filed. She ended up working in a strip club where her former students were major customers. She was probably the best actual teacher the school ever had. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.